Hello everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore here, and welcome to the Music Masterclass. So this is my regular series I do on Thursdays where we talk about making music. We talk about composing, arranging, improvising, everything having to do with the music creation process. And normally what I do is I've got some of the music that you all have created, and we talk about it. I give feedback on it. We see what we can all learn from each other, and that's what we got up today. And I also, if we have time at the end, I want to show you something else that I like to do, which is show you something I've been working on and give you an opportunity to learn from my process a little bit. So, the two main things that we've got going on today is some work that was done for my two courses that I offer, the kind of advanced theory courses that I have, the harmony and chord progressions course and the practical counterpoint course. Both of those courses are, on the advanced side, and they've got exercises that go with it. And I always love to be able to give comments on people's work that they've done for those courses. So I do want to apologize. It's not my fault, but I will apologize anyhow for the fact that the recording yesterday did not come out. We're not 100% giving up on them finding the recordings. Apparently, the whatever is going on behind the scenes, this is hosted on Circle, but then Circle's video hosting is handled somewhere else, and it was that's who the buck has been passed to. So, apparently the people who were doing their video hosting stuff messed up, and it's supposedly working now. I did a test this morning, and the test worked fine for the recording, and Circle says, oh yeah, it should be fine, and they are trying to see if they can recover yesterday's recordings. So in any case, we'll see. We'll see if it happens or not. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at a couple of pieces that were submitted, as mentioned, as part of courses here, and then you can get a little peek inside the course and see what's going on. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I think actually, let's check out here. I know I'm going to guess on pronunciations. Hadrien was going to possibly be able to make it, possibly not, and I don't see that name here, so I'm going to say that no. But Brian, you're here, so you get to be on first, and then we'll see if someone else is able to join us later. So Brian Collins has been working through the counterpoint course, and I hear you coming on board.
Can you hear me?
I do hear you. Are you hearing okay, or do you hear any
Yeah,
echo or
I'm
anything?
fine.
Good.
No, I'm fine.
Excellent. And you are somewhere, you mentioned not home. Okay, so yes, what you've got up here is the beginnings of a fugue. And we looked at another fugue that was going through the same process like a week or two ago. And so now people are going to get to see another take on essentially the same battle plan and see where it leads to. So before I just start playing through what we see here, what all do you want to tell us about this?
Very little, actually. I did it exactly following your recipe in that I started with your skeleton, exactly the same
Mm-hmm.
skeleton. Then I did the subject and stretto in that I
Mm-hmm.
got a subject, and it's only 2 bars. I wondered if I should have made it a bit
Yeah.
longer, and made sure it worked what I thought was in stretto.
Mm-hmm.
And then having done that, I did it with an answer at the fifth. I
Nice.
didn't know whether the answer should have come in later or is allowed to overlap. I'm
Mm.
not sure about that.
Okay.
But I overlapped it slightly and then thought of a counter subject that might have potential for later on. I
Nice.
haven't done any exposition and certainly no development.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of walk people through because many of the people watching this will not have gone through the counterpoint course, and when you say that you did it by following my recipe or my outline, I talked about what that was before. But let me start by just playing the beginning of your fugue. And then I'm going to come back and talk, because the important thing to know about this process here is that the process that I lay out doesn't begin with writing the beginning of your fugue. It starts the starting point of the process that I lay out involves working some things out to ensure that things work out later on in your fugue in nice ways, rather than just starting a fugue and then hoping. It's doing some prep work to make sure that things work out well. But rather than bore people with the prep work, I want people to hear the actual result of the beginning here. So I'm just going to play this here. You have your subject, you have an answer and a counter subject. And as you said, you've made your answer overlap the subject a little bit, which is actually fine. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But anything else before I just play these few measures?
No?
All right. Well, let's go ahead and hear this. This is what will eventually be the beginning of the fugue. All right. Nice. So yes, this sounds a lot like people who have seen me go through. I've gone through a couple of these. I went through one from David Griffiths and one from Frank Paul, who were both working from the same outline. So we're going to all create variations on similar sorts of subjects, but it is kind of amazing how different they can all sound. So I'm going to play this again. And just so I can hear it again and give some comments about it, then we'll talk about where it came from. All right, good. So, so when we talk about the answer overlapping the subject, the idea is that your subject officially goes 2 full bars, but you've decided to bring the answer in before the subject is actually completed. Realistically, that is absolutely fine. Do that if you want. However, what it also gives you is the ability to say, "Oh no, those last 5 notes of the subject become optional," and like you would then be excused if later on in the development you decide to only use the portion up to there. If it for whatever reason doesn't work out to use those last 5 notes, you are now off the hook. You can use them or not use them. So when it works out, great. So I'm going to comment a couple things about the subject itself here and how things are working. So the subject, the very first thing that I noticed was the first 4 notes. I mean, well, that's the first thing you hear. But they're interesting notes. They they have a quality to them that's not sounding very Baroque to me. It either feels older or newer than that, if that makes any sense. Does that did you have any feelings about those about the beginning? Do you have any idea what I'm alluding to here?
I do sort of. It's slightly modal.
It is. It's
Uh,
got this modal
and,
aspect to it. Where
and
where do you think that comes from?
personally, I like older music and I like 20th century music. And I'm
Aha.
not over keen on 18th century,
Gotcha. So
personally.
it makes sense that your brain kind of goes there. So what quality of especially those first few notes? There's more to it than that, but the first 4 notes set the stage very well. What about those first few notes? Do you think is causing it to feel more modal than anything?
Well, it starts on the A and it goes down a whole note, a whole
Mm-hmm.
tone, uh, and then So it's got basically it's 5-4-1,
Yeah.
5-4-1, 3-4, but it's 5-4-1. So I also sing a bit of Georgian stuff, and there's a lot of 5-4-1 in that.
Yes. So yeah, that 5-4-1 pattern is not particularly characteristic of Baroque music. You would see 5 leaping directly to 1. You would see 5-3-1 outlining a triad. By deliberately skipping the F here, it's taking a little outside the world of where Bach might have done this. And furthermore, there would have been another way of doing it if it had gone G, E, F, then it would feel like a little bit of a 1-5-1. But as it is, it feels a little more like 1-4-1. It feels a little like a little quick 1-4-1 in there. Not that there has to be any harmonization to that whatsoever, but it's already feeling a little darker than some would. And yeah, it's a fine quality, but it's like amazing what just the first few notes can really establish. So the next thing that I notice is that this pattern also feels further, I don't know, further outside the realm of Baroque harmony, in that we have this leap of a fourth, which is fine, but then we're kind of leaping also, or whatever that is. It's a small leap, or it's an augmented second. It's a skip, which is typically avoided in that genre of music, but is not particularly avoided in more modern music. So you hit us with something else. You hit us with two things in that first bar that are a little unusual for older music, but feels much more in keeping with 20th century. So is that something that you are aware of? Is that augmented second thing there as a thing?
Well, only I saw it as I know it's a melody, but I still saw it as D harmonic minor.
Yeah,
And in some ways, it was a bit scalar in that.
it
I know
is.
that you wouldn't normally use the harmonic minor for a melody,
Well, it's not
but
that you wouldn't use it. It's more that when Bach uses it, or when, and I don't want to just single out Bach, when composers of that period use it, there's a typical thing of leaping down from the B
yeah,
flat to the C sharp, or leaping up to avoid this sense of,
the
wait a minute,
arrange.
was that a step or was that a leap? You just make it a leap, and then everyone knows it's a leap and they're okay with it.
Okay.
That's the Baroque trick, or the classical trick. Most Baroque and classical composers would do that more often than not, rather than actually expose that thing. And then you come right back down that same thing. And when you do that, it brings in aspects of, like, Middle Eastern music. I always, for lack of a better reference,
Yeah.
anytime you're playing with that aspect of the harmonic minor scale, it brings in that quality. And so you're right off the bat having a subject that's going to be unlike anyone else's subject, even though it's built from the same skeleton that we're all using. So it's just really interesting to me how much variety we can get out of that. So, as far as what happens after that, there's something going on that I haven't analyzed yet, but we're going to try to do this now. I'm looking at this, and I see that your answer. I think I know why, but I see that your answer. First of all, it's been tonally adjusted. You changed the first note, as you normally should, but after that, everything is correctly at the fifth, and yet it doesn't feel like A minor. In other words, this part feels more or less like D minor, but your answer, even though it's up a fifth, doesn't feel that much like A minor. And I think I can put say exactly why, but how about you?
Well,
You
I
have
think it's
any?
because it's got the B flat in it.
Yeah, you didn't lose the B flat, and you didn't add a G sharp.
Yeah.
So the question is that how you want it? Because that's fine. You can do that. But normally we would be using B naturals and G sharps to have more of an A minor feel.
Yeah.
I want to try it. Just to try
I
it.
could try that.
I'm going to try the B natural here, the B natural here, the B natural here. And I will let this B flat stand because I feel like maybe by the end it'll be okay to come back. And now I want to get some G sharps in there. So here's this G sharp. I guess I'll let this be the
Probably the
G sharp
beginning of that
also because
bar as
that's
well.
that same that's that thing. And I'll let this be a G sharp. Now I want to hear this. Okay, so to me, that did not improve it. The A minor
No.
felt the A minor felt very out of place. And I think I know why it felt out of place, and it's because even though you say you're using D harmonic minor here, and you're not using C sharp other than this one note. And really, there's a whole lot of B flat that feels as much like G minor as anything else. So it kind of feels like your subject has kind of morphed into G minor. And therefore, going up a fifth, I expect to be back into D minor. So I think the quality of your subject, the fact that your subject itself kind of modulates to G minor, more or less, kind of, sort of, means that your answer is going to feel like, oh yeah, D minor is a good place to be rather than A minor because that's up a fifth. So yeah, and that's another modal quality of your subject, that it doesn't revolve around that leading tone other than that one little bit there. So it's an interesting
And the
subject.
answer is basically a G minor arpeggio as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, at the beginning of
Because
the
of
answer.
because of the tonal adjustment.
And so by tonal adjustment, so for people who don't know what that is, it's the fact that normally the answer should be literally everything up a fifth. So this D up a fifth is A, right? Up a fifth and then down an octave, or a couple octaves. G up a fifth is D, but A up a fifth would normally be E. And so technically what's called a real answer would have started with an E. But there's a thing that we often do creating fugues of having the first couple notes of this answer be adjusted so that it's not literally everything up a fifth, but has a little adjustment so that it still feels like the one chord. So that it still feels like we're in D minor. And if we started this thing with an E, that might destroy that. Now, as it is, the fact that you really are outlining the four chord a little bit there means, well, here you are outlining the one chord, and maybe you could have gotten away without the tonal adjustment, but the tonal adjustment just seals the deal. Now we clearly have D minor.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is going to make a really interesting fugue that's going to sound, unlike
Yeah.
anyone else's fugue here.
But obviously, since it doesn't start like a normal Baroque fugue, then it could well be that I'm sort of digging holes for myself that will be difficult to get out of.
I don't know. It'll be interesting. That's all I can say.
It'll
I've
be
written
interesting.
any
Yeah.
number of fugues that deliberately don't sound Baroque. And the same processes work, and you just give yourself different parameters to work in as far as what kind of treatment of dissonance you might use, and what kinds of melodic figures you find acceptable. And in my experience, you can make it work. It does. There's nothing about a fugue that needs to sound Baroque. So
And, and the
yeah.
and the other thing that I did a lot of, because I thought it might make things easier further down the line, is a lot of eighths and 2/16
Yeah, you
as
have
the
that
rhythmic
figure.
motif.
Yeah, and that's. Go ahead.
I just thought that that might make things easier by putting a lot of those in straight away.
And easier in what way?
Well, later on for development, that you'd recognise the
That's the answer I'm looking for. So yeah, the idea with a fugue is we know there's going to be imitation and there's going to be different voices coming in, and we're going to keep reusing that subject over and over and over again. And so one of the key features that we're looking for in a subject is something that's going to be recognizable when it comes in. And first of all, that is already a very recognizable because it's so distinctive. That fourth leap down, that's just a very distinctive kind of figure. So that's going to be recognizable. But then every time we hear this, the ear is going to go, oh yeah, yeah, that voice is doing the subject. Because by the time you're done with this fugue, you got all this stuff going on, and it's hard for the ear to know what to focus on. But every time it hears something it recognizes, it's going to go, oh, there's that subject again. Yay, I like that. So yeah, I think you did a great job of planting recognizable elements into your subject. So I do want to go back and just kind of talk people through the idea of the skeleton and what's going on here. Even though the fugue starts with a complete statement of the subject, and yes, Brian overlapped the answer very slightly with the end of his subject. What we're really looking for is somewhere within the fugue, we want to overlap the subject with itself more than that. We want to do what's called stretto. And here is that same subject now coming in after only 2 beats. And if Brian followed the procedure correctly, this will work. Yeah? Yeah, beautiful. So the one thing that's noticeable here is that this dissonance right here is striking, but it's not striking in a way that sounds out of character given the character you've already established in your subject. And so this idea that you can create something that works in stretto with itself is the direct result of starting with this skeleton where every 2 beats you plan where your notes are going to be. And as you learn in my course, as long as every 2 beats or every whatever, it could be 4 beats, whatever you choose is going to be your, how long you're going to wait before bringing in the imitation. Here he's doing it after 2 beats. Then every 2 beats, if the melody moves by a third, it's going to work, right? The melody starts on an A, and then 2 beats later, it's on a C sharp, but then the imitation comes in on an A, and it works because they're a third apart. So as long as your melody keeps moving in thirds every 2 beats, it means those places are going to line up. Oops. You're always going to have intervals of a third or a sixth. So the course explains all this in great detail and goes to examples. But by starting off with this skeleton where you're just looking at the notes every 2 beats, then you can write your subject around it. So he's got that A, C sharp, A, and he chose to go up to this F, which works just as well. So by building your subject around that skeleton, you're guaranteed that then every 2 beats, you're going to get a nice A against C sharp there, A against C sharp there, and F against A here. So it's a good strategy that allows you to know that this stretto is going to work, and that means, once you're 20 bars into your fugue and you're ready to say, hey, I wonder if I can do some stretto, you already know the answer is yes. That's why I like to start with this skeleton idea to make sure I have a subject that I'm going to like. So, in any case, that's the process, and yeah, the course explains it in way, 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 way more detail. So yeah, I know I'm talking very advanced stuff, but great job following that. Any other questions or comments, Brian?
No, with that feedback, I'm happy to go on, at least go as far as the part 2 and the development and bring in another voice. I may have to constrain the range of one of the voices to avoid too much overlap.
Yeah, you definitely have more than an octave being described
Yeah.
by your subject, and that's not illegal, but you're right to be concerned there. Now, the good news is that's a really easy to fix because we already talked about these last five notes as being a little whatever because they're overlapping the answer anyhow. So A, you can lose those five notes, or just take them down an octave. Well, I guess if
Yeah,
you
I
take them
think I
all the
could
way
just take
down an
them down an
octave, you
octave
just
and
have the opposite problem of B flat now being too low. But it could be any you can play with
yeah.
that anyhow.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my only concern. I may have given myself too wide a
Yeah.
range.
So, but
Okay.
yeah, but
Thank
you
you very
you
much.
you don't have too wide a range other than those last five notes, and so that's going to absolutely be your saving grace. You will totally be able to work with the beginning part of your subject, and if you have to play octave games at the end or omit those notes sometime, it's not gonna be a problem at all.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, sure. All right. So thank you so much for the music, Brian. Great job, and looking forward to hearing where it goes. All right. So I am now going to. So Brian, I will say goodbye here, and you will still be here. You just won't be here. All right. So I see now that. Oh, yep. There we go. All right. So and I know you say from France, and that makes me even more scared because I already know that I can't pronounce French. And so any attempt that I would have had to pronounce your name is completely out the window right now because there's probably some high silent letters that I don't know about. So why don't you pronounce your name for me here?
Mhm.
Hello? Can you hear me? I see you.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, I see you and hear you.
perfect. For some reason, I don't see anymore, but well.
All right, so I'm going to let you fiddle around with that for a while. And meanwhile, I'm going to start talking. And I put that in the chat, and maybe you'll see that. Oops, and you left. Oh, but now he's back.
Yeah, that's better.
Is it better? Yay, cool. All right. So, excellent. It's great to meet you. And would you say your name so I don't have to mispronounce it?
Hadrien.
Oh, I just heard like mic breaking up sounds.
This should probably be better now,
Yeah.
I guess.
All right.
I
So,
don't know why this computer keeps resetting its mic volume too high every
all
time.
right, but that's definitely better. So, would you mind introducing yourself?
So, Hadrien.
Adriana. All right. That's going to be my closest approximation. All right. So, you have been doing a bunch of the exercises actually in the harmony course, and I've loaded several of them up. And yeah, there's one or two that I would definitely want to talk about. There's this SATB version of Mary Had a Little Lamb. There's this piano version here, which I probably won't get to, but we'll see. And but the other one is, oops, where's the other one I'm looking for? There's the other one, the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star SATB version. So I'm especially interested in talking about the couple of SATB ones because then we can relate them to each other also. But why don't you say anything you want to tell us about either of these before we dive in?
Well, as I mentioned in the comment section of the course, in this one, my idea was that the second set of 4 bar acts a bit like a B section in a larger composition. So what I wanted to do here is to do something a little different than what you did in the A section, where basically most of the interest you added is in the harmony with these things like the second on the G chord and on the later the A7 chord. So here I try to instead do something that's a bit more interesting in the rhythm
The rhythm.
side with a
Yep.
bit of polyrhythm and that sort of stuff. And then later combine the two in the later repetition of the A section.
Nice. So yeah, the idea, and I really liked your comment there about trying to create this sort of variety that these four bars have a certain character. I mean, we talk about ABA, ABAC, or whatever, different forms, AABA, all these different forms. And usually when we talk about these, we're talking about units of more than four measures. But Twinkle Twinkle Little Star gives us four measure phrases, so that's what we got, right? So it's so you're definitely doing nice, interesting things with the rhythm here, and then, like you say, kind of combining it for the laugh. So I'm definitely looking forward to sharing this with people. Any other things before I just hit play on this one?
No, I don't remember anything else.
All right. Well, then let's go ahead and hear this. So again, the context here is the course is about harmony and chord progressions. That's the name of it. And the idea in the course is that you learn how to create interesting chords. In other words, how to choose interesting chords for a melody. More to it than that, but that's kind of the gist of it. But as part of the idea of learning how to create interesting chords is you have to learn how to write those chords effectively. In other words, if you think it's going to be interesting to have a G chord followed by a C chord, followed by an A chord, followed by a D chord, you're right. That is a good chord progression, but it's not going to sound good if you just play root position triads like that. You're not going to learn. If you try to play it that way, you're going to say, oh, that doesn't sound that good after all. But you'd be wrong, because if I played it, it would sound fine if I used correct voice leading and so forth. So the course kind of starts off by making sure that you're solid on basic voice leading techniques. And so that's kind of what these first couple exercises are about. By the way, I guess also before I play it, there's the Mary Had a Little Lamb, and then there's the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. They're coming from a same place, but was there a different aspect to the assignment? Did one of them I give you chords, one of them I didn't, or did I give you chords for both? Frankly, I don't remember.
Yeah, this one you give us the first four bars, so
Okay.
that gives a bit of a skeleton that I had to follow.
Gotcha. Okay, and I gave you everything, all the notes, or just the
Yeah.
chords? Okay. So, all right, let's go ahead. So apparently I wrote these first four bars here, and that was the skeleton that he then follows going forward. So let's go ahead and hear this. Nice. Oh yeah, beautiful, beautiful job. So yeah, now I'm remembering because I was looking for that A when you mentioned that there was a second on a G chord, and I'm looking to find it, but now I see it was here. So this is a thing that I had written originally as, okay, that's just a nice little bit of voice leading, create some harmonic interest, and you've managed to incorporate that sound later also, but also bring in all these interesting rhythmic elements. So the polyrhythm here, the triplet against the quarter notes, I like it. It's really interesting and works well. Do you play the piano or
Yes.
drums by any chance? Okay.
I played a little bit of drums and I play the piano regularly.
Gotcha. Okay. What I find is that it typically is pianists and drummers who gravitate towards this sort of thing, this multiple rhythms at once, because we're capable of doing it. And we've played music that does it. And if you're mostly singing or mostly playing a single note instrument, you never have the opportunity to play different rhythms at once, right? So you might play one rhythm while someone else is playing another, but you're not as aware of the interactions unless you study it. And so anyhow, I really like how that works in there. Did I put that 1-6-4 chord there, or that G over D chord?
You gave the whole series of chord symbols, yes.
Okay, yeah. So okay. Okay, yeah, because I was like not remembering, and I wrote I provided what I provided a year or so ago, and I don't always remember the details. But yeah, here again, you managed to use that A sound, and I think it's really effective. Yeah, and this boom 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 is a just lovely little melody that's happening there, and that's really the idea here. You by doing what you've done here of basically your alto part and your tenor part don't follow the melody, right? I mean, they don't have the same rhythm as the melody at all. So it's that much more important that they be interesting melodically, and I think they are. Um, I think we can all sing this. This melody here, this alto part. I think just looking at it, and, I'm going to challenge everyone to do. I'm not. I don't want you to do it because you'll be out of sync with me. But everyone else who's not on, or you could just mute yourself for a moment so you can sing along with me. But because if you try to really be on mic, will be off. But I'm going to count to 4, and I want everyone to try to sing this alto part because why not, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. G D D D D F sharp D E M bum 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 bum. Keep going bum ba da dum ba da dum ba da da dum da da dum. All right, you can unmute. That's an alto part, right? That's a
So
beautiful
actually,
alto
the
part.
second alto part, I think I almost copy pasted it from the first 4 bars as is, but
Well, you've got the
no, actually,
same. No,
I did tweak it
it's
a
a
bit.
little. It's yeah, because it's got to be different. It's different chords and
Yeah,
everything. You're using some of the same. Oh, you mean the last 4 bars?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
you tweaked it rhythmically. You added the ba-da-dum, which is a nice little touch. And yeah, so the rest of it's the same. But the first 4 bars is absolutely all you. And yeah, I guess your
I
last
played a bit more in
bits,
the
the
bass
bass.
range.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so really nice stuff there. Um, I'm going to flip over to the Mary Had a Little Lamb for a second because this is the one where you mentioned about it being hard to avoid parallel fifths.
Yeah, well, it
Um,
was hard on both, but this one I found it harder.
yes. So, I can see right off the bat one place where you did not succeed in avoiding them. Do you see this? Look at the left. Look at the right here.
Ah, yes.
Right. So
I was
let's
looking too much in the upper range.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about parallel fifths. So parallel fifths are a thing that you spend a way inordinate amount of time trying to avoid when you're studying how to do this kind of SATB writing or really any kind of writing in this classic language, and it's the there are situations in which parallel fifths sound great. And who I just saw, Larry Hankins, you're the one that posted that really nice Boogie Woogie piece, and you can't have Boogie Woogie without some parallel. Well, I shouldn't say you can't have it without some parallel fifths, but we're going to expect parallel fifths in some styles of music. But here we don't. And so let's talk about where they're coming from, why we might want to avoid them, and how to avoid them. So I'm going to give you a little rule of thumb, first of all. Pay attention to the fifth of the chord. That's going to be my attention. That's going to be my bottom line here. The reason we want to avoid parallel fifths is something about that sound is not the sound of classical music. We can get into why this is the case, having to do with the overtone series and the independence of the voices is all sorts of stuff, and I go into that to some extent in the course, that much more so in the counterpoint course. But the bottom line is there's something about this sound that doesn't sound like what we're going for here. It sounds like pre-Renaissance music, where they did that and then decided, ooh, no, let's not do that anymore. And it sounds like maybe some 20th century music where it became cool again, whether it's Bela Bartok or whether it's rock and roll. But there's this whole period of music where that sound was avoided. So the goal is to avoid a perfect fifth followed by another perfect fifth. So I said the goal is one of the tricks is going to be to pay attention to the fifth of the chord. So can you tell, does that, based on that, are you seeing anything here? So Dean's got a good answer here, and an interesting answer. That's one answer. But based on this, looking at the fifth of the chord, where's the fifth in this C chord?
It's a G.
Yeah, so the G is here in the melody, and it's here in the tenor. Now, when we come to the B minor chord, the tenor is the only one that has the fifth, right? If you pay attention to who has the fifth, and you try to avoid giving the same voice, letting the same voice go from fifth to fifth, you will avoid like 90% of all the parallel fifths that you would ever want to avoid by just avoiding giving the same voice the fifth of the chord twice in a row. And that's because this is a thing. The bass is probably moving from root to root. And so if someone else is going to move from fifth to fifth, you're going to have parallel fifths, right? So if we're going to let the bass move from root to root, then the tenor can't go from fifth to fifth. So the other fix for this is say, tenor, let's not take the fifth. Let's take the root.
Take either that, or I guess I could use the E on that side as well.
There's a lot of things we can do. So I'm going to try this one first. If I do this, I now have a chord with no fifth here, but then I could take the D up to an F sharp. Oh, no, I can't, because now I don't have a third. So I would have to take this guy all the way up to a D and go.
That's quite a leap.
And it's quite a leap, but it's not. It's only a fifth. It's conceivably okay. So there's a couple of solutions that involve changing the B minor chord. Other things that could be done. Were you talking about taking this G down to an E?
Yeah.
So that's totally doable also. I'm not.
But we already have a G on top, so.
Yeah, we have a G on top. This, I guess we'll see. There's something about that spacing. It's not bad. Yeah, it's not bad actually. It's a little weird spacing wise to have two notes a third apart, and an octave between them, right? That's all kind of an odd spacing, but it's better than parallel fifths, right? So that's a possibility also, as is, for that matter, a C up here, except if I put a C up here, I'm not going to want this tritone leap down here. I'll be okay with that leap up, but not as okay with this. So yeah, not crazy about that answer. But the people in the chat are agreeing on let's use some inversions. Now, of course, I gave you the chords, but I didn't tell you you can't use inversions. So if this guy was in an inversion like that, that's not bad at all. That was Dean's specific suggestion, the bass from B to D. I'm looking to see, well, did I create any parallel octaves now? Because now I've got the D to E here. I was a little afraid the alto was going to have a D to E, but no, it doesn't. It's got a seventh here. So there's another solution for you.
Okay.
And yeah, changing the inversion to avoid parallel fifths is perfectly valid. Yeah, perfectly valid. Let me hear the rest of the bit. Nice. And of course, the same issue over here, so I'll temporarily change that to a D also. I really like things like this passage here. This idea where the A in the melody stays constant, but you have one voice moving against it. That's called oblique motion. Beautiful sound. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, so anything else that you want to tell us or ask me about having to do with these?
I was wondering if I just didn't put a little bit too much of rhythmic energy in the bottom, but well.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I like it. I mean, it all has to do with your goal, right? The 4-3 regression sounds odd. Yeah, it doesn't to me. I guess it's because I'm okay. So here's the thing, Dean. Dean's commenting that 4-3 sounds odd, and it does if you play it with a way that gives you parallel fifths like that. But that progression 1-4-3-6 is bread and butter to the jazz musician. So this is I've told this story before, but it bears repeating. It is one of the first chord progressions that I learned to recognize by ear, all because of one concert I went to where I was sitting here in the audience and they were playing, the band was playing all these jazz tunes that I knew, and I kept recognizing that they were playing different chords than that I knew for it. And then I recognized the bass player, specifically Paul Warburton. I talked about it, like he died a year or so ago, and I talked about it shortly after that. That he kept playing boom or and he has a 5-string bass, and so he would like be able to play that same progression down lower also. That sound of 1-4-3-6 I heard over and over and over again, and I'm like, wow, Paul's playing that. He's playing this all the time, even on chord progressions that I didn't know, I didn't learn that way. And that's when I started to recognize that, wow, that chord progression is really generally useful, and you can plug it in even if you originally learned a song a different way. So I became very accustomed to that. But in classical writing, it would be less likely to do that than it would be to write 1-4 and then 1 in first inversion. And had that been 1 in first inversion, we would have avoided our parallel fifths. And maybe that's why classical people don't use the 1-4-3-6 so much, because you end up with that. You end up having to write around this. But if you write this, then we're better. So that's probably how Mozart would have written it. What do you think, Hadrien?
I don't know.
Yeah. There's more. The great thing, and one of the things that we're trying to learn in this course is there's multiple ways of getting from point A to point B. And I talked about this a lot in the Jazz Piano Holiday course last time also, that we're on a 1 chord, 2 bars later we're trying to reach a 2 chord, and I got a million ways of doing that. I can go 1-4-3-6, or I can go 1-2-3, sharp 2 diminished 2, if it happens to work with the melody. Oh, it's not going to work with the. It's going to clash with my melody, so not liking it. But yeah, there's all these jazzy progressions that are all designed to get me from 1 to 2, and that's part of what this course is eventually trying to teach us, all the different ways of moving the chords. But as I said, in order to be able to appreciate that, you got to know how to play them effectively so you can test your own theories. If you think the following chords are going to work, you want to be able to play them. You want to be able to play them or arrange them in an effective way. So I guess my question for you also, Hadrien, which again I'm probably not saying right, but
Close
is
enough.
where, like, tell us a little more about where you're coming from, where, what your background is. Are you already somewhat experienced in writing music in this format, or are you more
Uh,
experienced in chords, or where are you coming from?
so what I wrote so far was quite a few things actually. If I can just drop things in a chat, but
Yeah,
you're not going to
yeah,
have
go for it.
time to listen to all of this right now anyway, since you only have 10 minutes left. But this is a bit of a dump of the various music and audio related things I've done so far. I do
Nice.
tend to upload them to SoundCloud from time to time. So the most recent thing I did was a bit of, let's say, play on what would Jingle Bells sound if it were in the more Finnish metal style, because if Santa is from Finland, we have to change this, right?
Okay, is that Satan Claus here?
Yeah.
All right, should I play this for a moment? How long is this guy?
It's short, I think, 1 minute and also on 2 minutes, yeah.
All right, shall I play it?
Ah, sure.
Yeah, let's hear. Yeah. Yeah, so love it. Totally different than what we're working on in that harmony course.
And
So
yeah, there are other things in there that are completely different. Like this thing I call piano bar is more of something in the ragtime style. So
I'm gonna hear a second of that. Okay, yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, you have come from a varied background of picking from different sources. Is this kind of your first exposure to the idea of writing this sort of structured SATB type of writing?
yeah, this I've
Wow.
never done before.
All right. Well, good job in diving into it, and yeah, I think you've got some really good ideas going for it, and yeah, look forward to hearing some of the chord progressions you end up coming up with here. So before I move on, is there other things that you want to talk about, ask about here?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. So yeah, I do, I'll probably, I want to kind of maybe stay focused a little bit on these vocal things here. And as I mentioned, I did have something that I wanted to share with people here that I've been working on. So I'll just do that briefly before I go. But I want to thank you for being here and thank you again for the lovely music and
Maybe
thanks
I
for
can
working through this.
actually
Yeah.
maybe I can reply to Dave in
Yeah.
orally. That would
Yeah.
be faster.
Go ahead.
So I write in different ways from depending on the projects. Like the very first pieces I wrote were basically improvising on a piano and picking the things that that sounded good and sticking them together in some way. And then I moved to something to more structured ways, like starting from partition editor and trying to do a melodic line and then find some harmonies that works with it, even if at the time it was obviously a bit intuitive. Like I didn't have a strong understanding of harmony at the time. And though composing I don't do as often, maybe because I like the interface a bit less. But what I do from time to time is to play something on the keyboard and then fix it in the DAW because I don't have the time to learn to play it right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good answer, and definitely, I'm sure because how those recordings were put together. It's really interesting to hear music that's not coming from any sort of classical kind of place, not coming from the kind of place that people are accustomed to seeing notated, and yet knowing that you created that music using notation. That's interesting in itself, and definitely worth discussing more there in the community. So I encourage that conversation to continue. Okay. All right, so thanks again. And yeah, I'll be seeing you around. Okay. So the last thing that I wanted to do is just share a little bit about this piece here that I've been working on because it relates to a bunch of the things we've been talking about lately, which isn't why I wrote it. So apparently, Saturday was World Singing Day. It's a thing that got started by some local musicians here living in Boulder, but it's become a worldwide thing, if not a super well-known worldwide thing. But it's a tradition over the last few years of having groups of people get together and sing. And there's like an official World Singing Day song that you were supposed to have sung this year. And anyhow, I didn't find out about it until too late. But it got me interested in the idea of creating songs specifically for the purpose of singing. I mean, to some extent, all songs are for the purpose of singing, but what I mean is one in which it's really designed for sing along kinds of activities where it's not necessarily requiring a professional choir, and yet like their official song does. I mean, it starts off like, oh yeah, this is something that just a bunch of people could do singing along, but then quickly you realize, oh no, this requires people who are actually singers, who actually do this. And so I ended up doing the same in my version here. But the idea is that in their song, in their version, it starts as a round and basically remains around. And so I wanted to write around, but I also wanted it to not just be around, because if you write around, like, row, row, row your boat or whatever, you end up being kind of limited harmonically in what you can get away with. And so I wanted to write around, but also write it in a way that I could then take the ideas and build other things out of it. And I mention this because I'm going to play it for you. It's not that long. And I want you to think about the imitation that's going on in here. And then eventually we're going to take this piece and we're going to try to build a recording of it and all. And so we'll talk about that. I want to try to do that as a collaborative recording when it's done. It's not necessarily done, but it's done enough. So I'm going to play this thing. And I also want to just comment that it's got imitation in it, and yet it doesn't sound Baroque, right? And so when I talk about like, oh, you can write fugue, it doesn't have to sound Baroque, this is an example of something that's using canon. It uses a plain round, and it uses a canon at the fifth, and it's going to sound like me harmonically, I think. So let's take a listen to this thing, and then we'll dive into it more in the future. But I want you to see where it is right now and think about that. Think about those aspects of it. All right, it's going to be that way, but I'm going to try closing MuseScore 3 and see if that's any happier. All right. So my wife and I worked on this together. She's the one that told me about the singing day, and we together talked about the idea of writing some music for it. And she says, I think we should start with a haiku. And she wrote a haiku, just, the short little poem. And that's what all the lyrics are set on here. But, there's sections of it that are that descant part, right? That high soprano part. We're just going to put different words for it or figure things out for it. So anyhow, it starts off as a simple round that anyone could sing. But then, if you have a whole choir, you can do the rest of the fancy stuff too. But even that isn't like ridiculously hard. And part of what makes it not that hard is following all the voice leading principles that you learn about in things like the harmony course. So anyhow, we'll be looking at this more as we go forward. I guess since MuseScore 4 is what's up right now, I'm going to go ahead and use it to play the masterclass theme. It's not going to sound any different because we don't have the fancy sounds yet, but we will get to hear Music Masterclass theme music being played by MuseScore 4 anyhow. So, hope you've enjoyed the session, and thanks again, Brian and Hadrien, or something along those lines. I hope you've enjoyed the music there, and thanks for your contributions there of music for us to be talking about. And it's loading. It's taking its time. And here we go. All right, let's hear some loading audio samples. Give us a moment. It's not going to be this slow normally, but this is my faster computer, so I'm not really sure. But in any case, thanks everyone for being here. This has been Marc Sabatella and the Music Masterclass. And this is what we do every Thursday. Talk about music, talk about how it's put together, how we're putting it together, how we can do a better job of it, and what we can learn from each other and teach each other. So just keep posting music. Dean, I'm loving that piece that you just posted. I probably want to take a look at that sometime soon if possible. So that's something that we can all, everyone be sure to check that one out, Dean's piece. Kais has a new piece that, or reworking of a piece that I'd love us to be talking about also. So, by all means, post your music, give each other comments, and let's keep doing this. All right. See you next time. Hadrien. All right. That's going to be my thing. No H at all. There we go. Okay. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.